Yeah, it had like really nice smeg hob, like maybe you'll see it in a vlog or something, like a smeg hob and like this fancy tap, this large sink, like great secondhand kitchen, all of it like with an oven and everything, and 350 quid. I was like, why do I want to go to IKEA and spend 8 grand on saying new when I can buy a secondhand one? That's great, but the downside was it was like this horrible aqua blue, horrible greeny aqua blue color, and I was just like, the color has to go. It needs to be black. I'm painting it all black. But so I was googling like what is the best primer to use, because if you just paint it black, kitchen cabinets with the melamine, it will just like rub off and it will just scratch off really easily, and it will look shit within like 24 hours. It will look terrible. So you need a decent primer. And everyone was talking about this bin primer, this I can't remember the brand name, but it was like BIN. It's like, and it said synthetic shellac primer. And I was like, okay, cool. So I looked it up and I was like, shellac's an animal product though, isn't it? I don't know if I want an animal product. But then it was like synthetic. And I was like, oh, it's synthetic. Then it's not an animal product. So I bought some. But I was like, I just want to be sure. And I'm going to email the customer support. So I couldn't find some in Italy anywhere. I had to order it from, did it come from France or did it come from Germany? I can't remember. But anyway, I had to order it from outside of Italy. It took like a week to arrive, and super expensive post and packaging, and non-refundable. And in the meantime, I emailed the customer support. I was like, just to confirm, this is synthetic, right? And they were like, oh, no, actually, it's not synthetic. It says synthetic, but we also actually use real shellac, which is harvested from with the lac bugs and all of that. I was like, oh.
So like you made a mistake, so but you can't refund it. So like, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, and I was looking around and I was like, well, what else can I use? If I was to like, I can't send it back. If I was like to sell it or something, I don't know what I'm going to do with this primer.
Well, I mean, there's no difference between selling it on and using it, really, is there?
Yeah, I was thinking about all this stuff. So I was like, well, I bought it now, and I was Googling around, and everyone was like, no, don't use other primers. You have to use shellac-based primer, otherwise it's not going to work. It's not going to stick to the cabinet. It's all going to come off, and it's going to look shit, and it's going to scratch.
I don't know, man. I think people do that all the time, though. Like, you hear people always like, it's like ball bristle brushes. Like, oh, it's the only brush that'll be able to distribute oil through your hair and shit, which is just not true. But it's just like a hype and stuff like that. So like I think it happens with everything, though. You do get like hypes and stuff. Like even with like, because the animal product might very well be a good product, but there will probably be a synthetic alternative that'll do the job, no problem.
Well, I thought it was synthetic, right? It said synthetic shellac when I ordered it.
You made a mistake. That's fair enough. Like, you know, like people make mistakes, and like, yeah, like just don't, like, you just wouldn't buy it again, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But then, but then I was looking into it, and it seems that you don't have, you've only got like one company doing synthetic shellac, and then you got this other company, the one that I bought it from, which it says it's synthetic shellac, but it's not.
It's lying.
This other company is actually synthetic or not, and so the other primers don't work on the melamine because they don't stick to it properly. They don't adhere. So it seems like the only way to paint kitchen cabinets in a way that doesn't chip off, because I've used other primer on kitchen cabinets and it chips off, right? So this is the first primer that I've ever used that doesn't chip off. It seems like the only way to do it is with shellac, right? And so I'm like, what do I think about that? As it's an animal product. What do I think about that? It's a bit weird, me painting my kitchen with this animal product. I made a mistake, but actually, what is the ethics here? So I started thinking about it. And by the way, I painted my kitchen with it, and it's awesome. It works amazingly, and the kitchen looks sick now. It's almost finished. I'll send you a picture when it's done. But yeah. So I was thinking about the ethics of it. It's not vegan because it's an animal product, but is that the sort of like entirety of it? What is veganism? Veganism is the doctrine that man should live without exploiting animals. How much exploitation has gone into this? Is it exploiting animals? What is the ethics involved? And I thought about it more, And I came to the conclusion that in the case of shellac, it doesn't seem to me to be something which is ethically problematic, and it doesn't even seem to be something which is non-vegan.
Okay, so let's kind of go into that. So, like, obviously for everyone who's watching as well, so shellac's produced. Just give you like a quick, like a brief description. So shellac's actually it's produced by the lac bug. So the lac bug is it's like a small, there's actually like they're very different depending on if they're male or female. But the male and the female essentially reproduce. The male then dies. Female lays its eggs, and the larva buries itself into the bark of a tree, which then releases a resin to basically coat itself and protect itself from predators while it matures underneath the resin. It then burrows its way out of the resin, mates again, and then more bugs or like more larvae are produced. They then burrow themselves in, and you get this build-up of this naturally secreted resinous kind of material, which is like lac resin, which is then processed with alcohol, I'm pretty sure, to produce shellac.
Right.
So the actual process of getting the bugs onto the tree is also a kind of tentative one for vegans, I would say. So the way that what they do is they take they take females from the previous generation, and they put them in a bag and store them away. And then the next generation, so like the next time they go to like when it's like seasonal, when they go to produce the shellac, the tie the bag to the tree. The females then crawl out, lay their eggs, which then starts the life cycle over. About 2 life cycles in, they then end the process by harvesting the resin, right? So what they do is they take like an axe or like a little hatchet thing, chop off the branches of the tree, which are then scraped, and the resin is then scraped off, which is full of dead bugs and resin. But it's also got females in it, the live females, who are still alive from, who have then obviously been the ones that have just been born and mated with. So then they take some of them and use them as like essentially breeding stock, and the rest are then like allowed to die, and many will just die in general. And I think Peter estimated about, I think it was 100,000 die per pound of shellac.
Yeah, they're very small bugs. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there's reason to believe that these are conscious sentient creatures.
Right. So this is the thing that I've been thinking about, and this is the debate for today. Like I think maybe I might persuade you a little bit, or maybe you will persuade me a little bit. But I think both of us are on the same page with veganism. We're not going to start decapitating cows and pigs and chickens, but it's one of these grey area fringe cases in asking the question, where do we draw the line? Like Tom Reagan, for example, famously said, I don't know where we draw the line, but where you draw it, I'd advise you to draw it with pencil, because we might discover new things about these species at the other side of the line, and we might want to actually draw the line in a different place to include some of these animals that we previously thought didn't have moral value. So I'm tentatively drawing the line in pencil in a way which excludes the lac bug, for the female lac bug specifically, because you did a great job at describing the process, but there's a couple of things which I'd like to emphasize more about process, right? So you've got, let's take the female lac bug. These are tiny, tiny, tiny bugs. Like you could fit on the palm of your hand 1 million or something of them. I don't know how many you could fit in the palm of your hand. You could fit a huge amount. Like,
I don't think there's not. I think there are probably quite a few. You can fit quite a few. Yeah, they're really small. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the male lac bug is born through an anal birth. It's born out of the anus of the female lac bug, and then the male lac bug.
Well, I was pretty
flies
sure,
out.
that the birth larvae, which are a mixture of male and female, which then burrow their way out of the resin. Am I not right about that? I thought that's how they come to be. Like, and I think you're right. Like, it's like they don't have like that, like the reproductory gland or whatever, and the anal gland are like the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but essentially, like the layman explanation is that there's some sort of anal birth in which a bug is produced, and the male bugs, yeah, they start off as like little worm type things, like tiny little larvae, wormy type maggot things, and then they mature into bugs. But the male matures into a bug which can fly about, and it can, if we want to use language that you've been more familiar using recently with like the expressing the subjectivity of the being, it can express its subjectivity by flying about and doing cool stuff that bugs do, and then it mates with the female bugs, and then it dies. So the male bugs, it's not like the shellac process kills the male bugs.
No, the male bugs all die from like naturally anyway. They're dead before the next cycle's produced. So before the harvest, the males already died, because like that's the way that they kind of go through the process.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like the shellac harvesting kills the male bugs; they just die off because that's the circle of the lac bug life.
Yeah, that's the life cycle.
And
normally
so
about two generations of bugs, before 2 or 3, I think, before the harvest the resin.
Right. So the male bugs get to express their subjectivity, and they're not exploited by the process. The female bugs, on the other hand, though, do fall victim to the shellac harvesting process, because, as you described, they excrete sticky, like this sticky substance, which becomes the shellac. That's what you want. The sticky stuff. That's what you want from the shellac process. Is all this sticky stuff that they excrete, and they do that to protect themselves.
I was going to say, I don't think it's them that excrete it, is it? It's not the female that excrete it. I thought it was the larvae that excrete it.
No, it's the female that excretes it.
Are you sure? I thought the larvae excreted it, because I thought the larvae excreted it after it burrowed into the bark of the tree. I mean, it's not really that important, I suppose, but continue anyway. Sorry.
My understanding, well, it's sort of important, because my understanding of it is that the female essentially just pumps out all of this sticky substance and just engulfs herself in this sticky substance, and then becomes an immobile blob, which is indecipherable which way up. That they don't have any legs, they can't move, they can't do anything. They're just this blob which exude goo, and then they die, right? They lay eggs and then they die, right? So by the time the female lac bug actually starts producing a shellac, whether or not that's harvested or not, there is no subjectivity for the lac bug to express other than just exuding slime and then dying, right? They're completely immobile. They're just a blob. They don't have like any legs or arms or identifying features other than just like a blob, and an immobile blob which doesn't do anything but pump out goo, eggs, and then dies. So I was thinking about this, and I was like, well, I'm all up for not exploiting animals and allowing animals to express their subjectivity and not messing with them. But in this case, it's like, well, what subjectivity are they expressing? They're expressing nothing. They're immobile. They're just that they exude goo and then die, like, and then the sticks are taken and they're scraped off, and the goo's harvested. It to me, it's the least morally tragic thing that I've ever heard.
I mean, like, obviously it comes down to the experience of the lack bug. It's like, we could either be doing them a favor by killing them because it might be, a great deal of frustration, or that might be because it's their instinct to do so, they might actually feel contentment and then die. So it's like kind of like I'll be leaning towards the process that they don't feel suffering in that scenario, that it's less likely that they do. But then I would obviously evidence would need to be obviously presented. Yeah, I mean, like, and also like the harvesting still might cause them a great deal, like, because they could be in theory immobile but feeling content within that, that sticky resin, as you say. I mean, I was under the opinion that the larvae produce the resin, but I'll have to double check that. But that we'll just work on the assumption that it is the female. Like, in this scenario, they may be feeling contentment anyway, and then when we go and scrape them off, it might cause them angst and then death. Do you see what I mean?
Well, they don't have like any anatomy other than they're just a blob. It's almost like they're almost like bacteria at that point. It's just like a cell, not a cell, but it's not a single-celled organism.
I think they still have brains and stuff, man.
Maybe, but it just, for me, I'm not a biologist, so I don't know. It's just my intuition in reading about the female lac bug. Like the male lac bug, fair enough. The male lac bug like flies about and does cool stuff, right? It's got wings, it can do stuff. But the female lac bug is this blob with like, you can't even tell which way up it is because it's not got arms or legs or anything, right? It's just this like this orb, this little blob that exudes this sticky substance which engulfs itself and immobilizes itself. It can't move, it can't do anything. All it does, yeah, as I say, it just lays a few eggs and then dies, and then the larvae like crawl out or whatever and then start the life cycle again. But the female, once the female becomes an adult female, they're immobile. They do nothing. They're just like, it's just was it like, for me, this seems almost like akin to a bacteria at that point.
Well, I don't think so. I don't think that you can say that just because they're immobile that they're akin to a bacteria. I mean, the fact that they can have conscious experience, just because they don't move, doesn't mean that the conscious experience is necessarily like a negative. Like, and as well, like, obviously it depends upon the what we can see is the. I mean, it's very difficult because I think you're right with the. I know that the swelled up anyway to produce so many eggs, like, so the swell up into these like amalgamous kind of masses and stuff like that produce their eggs and so on. There comes to a question of two things. Either I think that we're doing them a favor in the sense of killing them because their lives are one of genuine frustration, in which case, these insects are, essentially being produced, or essentially by nature forcing themselves into a very precarious situation where they can't move, they can't really do anything and feel a life of constant frustration. Or the likely alternative as well is that they feel content, safe, and die. Essentially, like the main thing would be having the resin on them would alleviate the frustration. Because that would be like their willing.
For me, in terms of,
and then
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but either way, it seems contentious of whether we do this, because look, if let's say we take the females, put them on the tree, they lay the eggs, and we start this life cycle, then we perpetuate suffering if it would be better off that they weren't there, in which case we shouldn't have done it. And in which case what we've done is we've alleviated them from suffering that we've caused. But then if they don't feel suffering and they are content within a scenario, then we've prematurely ended their lives and used them as a means to an end. So it's like kind of like one way or the other. Do you know what I mean? The only other alternative would be to say that they didn't have conscious experience, but then I don't see any evidence for that because they have relatively, in terms of the capacity for awareness, is similar to the male. They just lack like wings and like like a separate, like the swell up so that like the thorax and shit like melds in with their abdomen and they become like this blob. But just because they're a blob doesn't mean that like they're a blob that doesn't feel.
Right. Yeah, I understand that, but I think you might be attributing too much human type emotion to this insect because although we're unable to enter the mind of a female lac bug whilst encased in goo, I think just from a biological evolutionary perspective, it would take more calories, a very small amount of calories on this scale, but it would take more calories to be in permanent distress.
I think the stream disconnected there. Sorry, guys. We're back. I don't know what happened.
No worries. So, when did you hear me last? What was I talking about last?
One second. Just give it a second. Okay. Right. Okay. The stream should be back on now. I hope everyone can hear. Sorry. I don't know what happened there. Right. Footsoldier, I'm not sure what the last thing you said. I think you said something about me anthropomorphizing the female lac bug.
Yeah. I think we might be attributing too much human type emotional quality to the tiny blob encased in goo. But even if we're not, I think there's a better argument than just raising eyebrows. I think from an evolutionary perspective, from a biological perspective, an organism which is in constant anxiety and fear is going to consume more calories than one which is just super chill. So if it's the natural thing for a female lac bug just to be encased in goo, not move, and exude slime, then surely natural selection would produce a state of affairs in which the natural way for the female lac bug to be would be a lower caloric burn and not in a state of anxiety and panic. And to even have that level of consciousness to be able to experience anxiety and panic is going to require more calories for a high, for more highly developed neurophysiology.
Yeah, like you could argue that it's like, for example, like it has a brain, and so we can give it I think we can give it the benefit of the doubt that it is conscious and aware, and like subjective. And I think that we could also say that, look, one, nature is not perfect; it does make mistakes anyway. And then two, we could even say that, look, it may very well have the evolutionary response of not being panicked, but being content, but still being conscious. And it would need the consciousness maybe to essentially, problem solve enough to get itself into the situation where it can encode itself in resin and, and so on.
Yeah, but once it's encoded in resin, it has no more, in terms of biological evolutionary role, it has nothing to do. It doesn't have any need. It doesn't require consciousness.
But just because it doesn't require consciousness doesn't mean that it can just turn it off. It's like, it doesn't require consciousness anymore, so its brain it disappears. That's not how that works.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, oh, I don't need this, I'm gonna throw it out the window. What I'm saying is, from a biological perspective, less calories is better. The more calories you consume as an organism, the less you're going to succeed in terms of like biological, what I'm looking for, evolutionary pressure. There's more evolutionary pressure to consume less calories, not consume, but to use up less calories because of food supplies. Yeah. So if it had to, in addition to being an immobile blob which was exuding slime, in addition to that, it had to also think about continental philosophy. It's going to require vastly more calories than if it just had like a minimal or zero conscious state, right? So from an evolutionary perspective, you could argue it doesn't really make much sense that it would be highly conscious in a state of complete irreversible immobility.
I never said like one. It depends on like what do you mean by highly conscious. Like it could have a subjective experience in a limited sense, and it would still like not necessarily like I don't see the issue here. Like I don't understand like why you think that it would just like its consciousness wouldn't necessarily dissipate. Like just because I mean, for all I know, it could be extremely frustrated. It could be in agony. It could be, or it could be content. It could be asleep. Pretty much, it might just literally go to sleep. I don't know. But I don't think that we can just assume that its conscious awareness has somehow dissipated because it's now immobile.
Well, my argument is that a state of agony would be more costly calorically. Do you agree or not?
Well, yeah, but even if it doesn't need calories anymore, as you say, it's immobile. It doesn't do anything.
No, it does need calories to exude the slime.
It's already reproduced, so there would be no push and pull factors on that beyond the fact that it excretes slime. So its consciousness might be fully, just in the sense of just excreting slime. That's all it's aware of. That might be it. And just might really love excreting the slime, or it might really hate it. It doesn't matter. That's a positive or negative experience that needs to be taken into consideration.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think in terms of biology of it, I think it gives birth after it starts engulfing itself in slime.
I thought it was. I could have swore that it was the other way around. I'm pretty
because it does it to protect itself from predators, and then that's how they get. Because you can just get a bit of the tree slime and put it back on the tree, and then the insects crawl out and hatch, and the lifestyle starts again. So they're in the eggs are in the slime.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, there's just no reason to think that it would be not conscious. Like, as its consciousness, there'd be no reason to think that it was conscious now is not conscious because of its changed states in that respect. There's no reason to believe that it's lost its consciousness.
Right. Well, I'm not saying that it necessarily has to lose all consciousness, like the lights go out completely, but I'm just arguing that in terms of calories, having a state of extreme panic or having even a relatively elevated state of consciousness relative to the bug itself, it just would be it would just be an evolutionary disadvantage to burn calories on consciousness.
There's loads of evolutionary disadvantages. There's like animals that have like definitely disadvantaged themselves time and time again, and maybe but as long as it's not disadvantaged to the point in which it's no longer reproducing, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The lac bug, which is in a state of panic, will burn more calories, produce less eggs, and produce less slime. And therefore, if it produces less eggs,
why do you think that it would necessarily look like it could be in a state of panic, and that the state of panic might hasten the process? I have no idea. The state of panic also might reduce the process, as you say, but then the reality is these are like the finer points of the experience of the lac bug that we're not going to have information of. So there's no way to assume either, and certainly not on an evolutionary profile. That has to be empirical. Evolution doesn't produce rational outcomes from which we can predict. I can't predict the next stage of evolution because it's somewhat random. It's like random evolutionary traits develop, or then successful or not successful, and then we'll continue onwards. That's kind of it's usually described as extinction of the weak more than anything. It produces kind of shit adaptations, which then usually lead to the death of that animal, and then that animal doesn't reproduce, and so we have the ever finer specializations of animals into pigeonholed into smaller and smaller evolutionary traits, which manage to survive.
Right, but there's something problematic there with what you said. like firstly, you were starting to give the impression that evolution is random, and although there can be random evolutionary, let's say like attempts, the actual lineage it isn't just full of random adaptations because, as you mentioned briefly, the adaptations which aren't good result in killing the lineage of the.
I mean, if they're that bad, I mean, like the thing is that you can have adaptations which are bad enough that they don't kill the animal, but not so bad that they prevent it from. Sorry, not bad enough to kill the animal, but bad enough to make its life shit. It's like, so for example, like arguably the amount of anxiety, like rabbits seem to be fairly anxious creatures, right? Now their anxiety is like kind of beneficial to them because they've run away from danger, right? And it also makes them like burn more calories, as you say. Like they probably have higher stress levels, higher circulatory like rhythms in the heart and stuff like that. And they're in a constant state of like, well, not in a constant state of fear, because that's not the way I've met rabbits, and they're not always like that. But they're very like quick to feel fear. Now,
but that's actually beneficial. That's beneficial.
Yeah, that's beneficial to rabbits. But then you could find a rabbit it would be beneficial in a circumstance like to be chiller. But then rabbits in that area are still, producing in a somewhat anxious state because there hasn't been a push or pull factor, which has actually led them to being more chill. Like the environment doesn't necessarily entail that on it. Basically, what I'm saying is, unless something in evolution, like in the environment, forces change, as in the animal dies before it can reproduce, there is no push or pull in relation to that trait. So they may feel anxiety, take up more calories, still survive, still reproduce, and then continue onwards. We would have no idea of knowing that because that would require empirical investigation. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's no way to say because evolution, they don't feel anxiety. That's nonsense.
Well, the thing is, you gave an example of a rabbit, but it's advantageous to the rabbit to be on its on guard constantly, so that in the likely event that a predator comes, it can roost off and go back down its hole. And the ones which are like quickest to react and run away and go down their hole, whatever they do, that they're the ones that don't get eaten. And so they're the ones who can pass on their genes.
So there's a push and pull factor there, like that being made anxious by nature because it's more advantageous for them to be anxious, right? But then if you put those same rabbits in a like peaceful, alternative, it wouldn't prevent them from reproducing. So like you could have you might have a larger array of rabbits. You might have the more peaceful, like the more chill rabbits, and you might have the more super anxious rabbits, but there'd be nothing killing off the anxious rabbits.
Yeah, sure, but that's how the anxious trait developed in the rabbits originally. And so you can still have stuff. There's actually a word which I've forgotten, which means something which was evolutionary advantageous at a point in history, but is no longer so. But
like all canines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, an appendix to a certain degree, I think. And
I think the appendix. I think now it's like a thing for like gut bacteria or something, like a reset after infection or something like that. But I think you're right. Like
microbiome or something. Yeah, I actually heard about that as well. They reseeds the colon with bacteria or something.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of sad that I found that out after I lost my appendix.
Oh, really?
But I think that like take for example what canines. I think that what canines developed about like a couple of million years before us or something from small mammals who were eating like insects. Like you know what I mean? And then obviously they kind of passed their way down into like apes and stuff who kind of use them but not really, and it's more of like a show of force. And then like made their way to us, who then just really don't need them at all because even when we're eating meat, it's all cooked anyway. So it's like super soft compared to like when we would have needed them to like eat something that would have otherwise required a canine. And even for defense, it's not like you can growl at someone with tiny little human teeth. So
I don't even see many canines about on human mouths anyway? Like, how many real canines do you see on a human mouth?
I don't know. It's just a slightly more pointy in size. I really,
Yeah,
but
it's not hardly a canine.
no, it's hardly. I agree. I think cats have bigger canines than us, and they're like like a meter, like but But yeah, like I think that as you can see, that there are like byproducts of evolution. I think that's saying that whether it's you might be right, like maybe in a few generations, like the female lackbug might even just go, it might even go in an unconscious state. I just don't have the information to say that it does. I don't know whether it's in a state of pain. I don't know whether it's in a state of pleasure. When it's like when the excretion's done, it may very well die. If it like, but obviously females need to survive in order to reproduce the next generation, and obviously you have the larvae as well. I think, for example, the larvae who have yet to mature, I think they also die. So, or is it like, or do they intervene just before the eggs are laid? I think they intervene before the eggs are laid, don't they? But
I'm not 100% sure, and it might not be that clear cut. I mean, it might not be that accurate. So there may be some maggots killed as well.
Well, you see that I mean that this is the issue. Like, it just seems an unnecessary like production of like possible like suffering and death that we could kind of do without. I think like the problem is as well, like when we talk about like this resin being quite useful, I think it's like one of the biggest, like, was it necessity is the mother of invention, right? I think the reality of the situation is, unless we're pushed to do something that takes us out of the status quo, we're happy enough to keep the status quo the way it is. Very good example, I think, from what I'm aware, is like China and clay. Like it invented ceramic rather relatively quickly, China, comparatively to its neighbors and the most of the world. And so it was very content with ceramic, whilst we didn't have the equivalent, and so produced glass. And glass obviously led to numerous other inventions, which kind of like made us like technologically, saying us, like I mean like the like Roman, like Western kind of, like I think Egypt actually may have been the first place to produce glass, but I'm not sure about that. But but like that era, that like area of like history was like pushed forward by the necessity of needing glass and even desiring glass for like aesthetics. Well, the aesthetic of China was to appreciate the ceramic. And so like when I say like necessity is the mother of invention, I think like even with the resin, like you probably find that if we stopped using it, then something synthetic would come and take its place relatively quickly.
Right. Yeah, mate. I think you could probably make something out of a mixture of epoxy and I don't know, like some sort of. I guess you can make it. It probably already exists, to be honest. So I don't know.
And it might just drop in price. That'd be like more people producing it, like obviously lower, greater supply, higher demand, so on. Just prices drop.
Yeah. Before I forget, the word which I couldn't think of a minute ago, when you had an evolutionary part which used to be necessary but no longer is, the word that I was looking for is vestigial. If you've got like a vestigial organ, it means one that is no longer needed anymore. So yeah, that was in the context of the rabbits we were discussing that. But yeah, to go back to, I don't think we fully closed off my caloric argumentation for the consciousness of the lackbug, because we decided that the rabbits could have anxious rabbits, and then you could put them in a chill environment, and maybe then we get a mixture of chill and anxious rabbits when there's no predators around to eat them. Maybe on Rabbit Island, for example, there's a mixture of chill and anxious rabbits. But it still doesn't detract from my argumentation in the case of the lackbugs, because the lackbugs who are not anxious and in a state of panic will produce more offspring and get eaten less by predators, because the two things that they do when they are surrounded by goo, immobilized, is produce eggs and produce the sticklac, the sticky goo. So,
but here's the thing: like you could make the exact same argument to say that an anxious lac bug, like a lac bug which was not producing resin in haste out of fear of being eaten, wouldn't produce resin fast enough, and so would be more likely to be eaten. So you could argue that the more anxious lac bug had been in history more evolutionarily capable, and so like they're actually perpetually terrified of being consumed by predators.
I think evolutionary speaking, or like biologically speaking, it would be more. What's the word that I'm looking for?
Advantageous?
No, the word I'm looking for is parsimonious. It would be more parsimonious to have the adaptation that the lag bug simply exuded more goo than to be in a state of panic, which then resulted in it wanting to produce more goo. Because
But it doesn't have to like have one single outcome. You could have both. Both could be simultaneous. Like the lac bugs that survive are the ones that produce the most goo, and the ones that are the most anxious. That's just the way evolution works. Like not one. It doesn't have to be the same exact adaptation. It can have the same results, and that be like basically the push and pull factor. So then the ones that survive the best are the ones that produce the most and are anxious, or even just say like, the ones that like, survive the best are it depends upon the rate in which it's produced. I just don't think that we can make really what is an empirical claim on this matter.
well, the thing is here, the lac bug that produces the most goo is going to be the one that exerts or burns the least calories on consciousness, the conscious activities, right? Because the bigger your brain, the bigger the caloric drain, the less calories allotted to producing slime and eggs.
Yeah, but I mean, like, so I would say that that's fair enough. But like, one, like the size of the brain's not changing for once. There's not going to be a massive change. If you talk about the disposition and like, let's say like the amount of like energy that's burned from like an anxious state versus a non-anxious state, I don't know how big of a difference that would be for the animal. Like, I don't even know what kilojoules an hour or whatever, kilocalories an hour that would be required. I think that like that's just hypothetical. And whether it would have like that big of an impact on its life anyway. Like this is all very speculative and empirical. That's all I'm saying. Like this isn't an argument. This is at best a theory.
Well, I can provide links for you if you want. Like there's an article here: scientists discover link in brain between anxiety and weight loss.
But that's fair enough. But what you have, like, humans experiencing anxiety and weight loss versus the evolutionary capability of an anxious lac bug versus a non-anxious lac bug, and whether it's actually had like effects to the push and pull factors of the experience in relation to evolution has changed the experience of the female lac bug is like the most speculative, like unbelievably specific theory on like evolutionary, was it female lac evolutionary biology? Do you know what I mean? Come on, there's no way we're gonna find that out. I don't know what to Google for that.
Yeah, it is somewhat speculative, but I don't think it's like just wild nonsense. I think it's reasonable.
No, I think it's reasonable. I don't think it's not reasonable. I just think that it's totally theoretical.
Yeah, but what are we going to do? Like, go and talk to lac bugs?
No, I mean, if we cared that much, I would say that what we need to do is just have a look at the metabolic rate of lac bugs. We'd probably do that, but then, even then, we could look at the behavior, maybe scans, and then even then, look, at the end of the day, this is all unnecessary anyway. It's like, do we need to do this? And even look at it like this: if they're not anxious and they're in a state of docility and they're content, then killing them ends that contentment and impedes the subjectivity of their will, in which case their deaths are bad. And if they are in a state of anxiety, then killing them might be good, but then making more of them would be bad. So either way, it's kind of like pincead. There's no way to there's just no reason to produce more of them.
Well, There are a few reasons, right? So firstly, this assumes that the only thing in the picture is the lac bug itself, right? So if we're going to say that the lac bug matters morally to the point that we should alter what we do based upon the lac bug, then either we have to say that all animals which are in the circle of moral consideration are equal, or we would have to rank it a bit. So if you stepped on a lac bug, it would be as tragic as running a human child over, for example.
No, I think that you can make arguments in terms of like subjectivity. So you could like, okay, we respect everyone's subjectivity, all animals, but I have a greater responsibility to my family, and then like my friends, and then maybe like the area in which I live, and then maybe like humans as a whole or something, and that be totally fine in terms of normative ethics versus meta ethics. It's like like for example, if let's say I made this example with Marty, right? Let's say the Chinese decided one day to invade Britain. It would not be wrong to fight them off if like that was what they were deciding to do, and you couldn't stop the war, and it was the only way to defend your family and so on like that. Fighting them off and taking lethal force against them would not be wrong in self-defense, regardless of them having the same value as you. So even if you had to kill, let's say, 10 times as many people as your family, you would be justified in doing so because you are morally accountable to your family, regardless of the value that is being lost in terms of the invaders.
Yeah, I can agree with all that.
Yeah, so in which case, like, we can say that like we have a great deal of moral responsibility when we talk about deliberately impeding the subjectivity of another. So let's say us invading China, that's a different set of that's a different scenario. Don't do it. You don't invade China, regardless of the amount of like you it might benefit your society and culture to a great degree. It doesn't justify you impeding the subjectivity of those Chinese people and taking it upon yourself to take from them in order to materially supply yours. And so what I would say is that, like, look, in terms of your responsibilities, you're most responsible for your family and so on like that, even arguably more responsible for you're responsible for your species more than another species. But that doesn't mean that you're justified in taking the life of another species and doing something which could have otherwise been prevented, especially if it's something like culture, tradition, money, things like that.
Right, but it's not so clear cut because let's say, for example, driving. Many people drive. I don't like driving, but I often have to drive if I'm like transporting large objects. I've got a van and have to transport them. Then generally, when you drive, you kill insects, right? Larger and more conscious than lac bugs.
Well, we don't know more conscious. Like, I think that's speculative. But yeah, you kill insects.
Yeah, or I don't know if it's so speculative. Like a lac bug, like the female lac bug, as we've already said, is like this immobile blob covered in slime.
It's immobile doesn't mean it's not conscious, and just because it can't fly doesn't mean it's not conscious.
Right, but anyway, like tiny, you almost can't see it with your eye. Tiny blob, immobile, can't move, doesn't have arms or legs or anything like that, versus like a bumblebee, for example. Like there's no comparison to me. Would you agree?
Sorry, could you please say that again?
Yeah, like if we compare the lac bug to something like a bumblebee, like the female lac bug, which is immobile, it doesn't have arms or legs, is just a blob that is covered in slime, can't move, compared to a bumblebee. Right, surely a bumblebee is, we're going to say the bumblebee is more conscious, right?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's any reason to say that the bumblebee is more conscious. Like, and I don't think that, like, look, I'm not a reductionist in terms of consciousness anyway. I'm not going to say like, oh, it's all reducible to the brain state. Like, I don't believe that. I don't think that's.
Are you like now arguing for some sort of dualism?
No, I'm not arguing for dualism. I just don't. I'm actually more like hylomorphic. I just don't think it's reducible. Like, I'm just not a reductionist, a material reductionist.
Well, what does hydromorphic mean?
Halomorphic means like a combination of causes, so that like there could be so in terms of consciousness, like consciousness can be a mixture of certain like metaphysical properties that are not simply reducible to the matter from which they may even be dependent upon to exist. So you could say like consciousness is not dependent upon the size of a brain, for example, or the complexity of well, maybe not, but maybe like is not totally reducible to the complexity of an individual's brain, or like how many lobes they have. And I think there's evidence to even point this out. Like, look, like there's people who've lost like 90% of their brains, and they've got the majority of their IQ, like IQs of like over 130 and stuff like that, and they've lost like 90% of their brains, like their cerebrum and stuff.
Yeah, the correlation in brain size to IQ is only a very loose one.
Yeah, but it's yeah, I'm not saying that is. I mean that they're still fully functional and conscious beings. You'd think that the reduction in the size of their brain may reduce the amount in which they're conscious, but it seems to not have any effect. And I'm saying like the same thing probably could be said about like animals, like the reason like how conscious they are and how aware of value, like how subjective the aware of value they are, may not be tied into the size of their brain. And so saying like a bumblebee is more conscious than a lackbug, I have no idea. I don't even know how to qualify that.
Well, the thing is, I don't just look at the bumblebee and say it's bigger, thus it's smarter or something. That's not what I was getting at.
It flies around, and so it must be more conscious. But then I think that's a jump. But like, there's no reason, like as well. Like obviously, we have the activities that the lackbug had to do before it got to that state, but also what it's conscious of, the values of its experience, maybe even centered around just the feeling of excretion. It might very well just have like an on-off switch of good and bad. If it's not excreting lack resin, then it's bad, and if it is excreting, then it's good. It might literally just be that, and but it doesn't matter to me. Like none of that actually matters at all. Like in terms of the experience of the individual, it doesn't matter if it's more or less complex. It doesn't diminish the value of that experience.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, bees have personalities. Bees have advanced navigation.
I know, but I don't really care anyway. Like, I mean, like if someone had no personality, didn't have anything but like, you know, let's say like someone didn't have anything but the feeling of hot and cold, and cold was bad and hot was good, like to like relative human standards, right? You know, they want to be warm and comfortable, but that's all that really matters to them, right? Then we'll make sure that they're warm and comfortable. And if that's all they can experience, I don't care. Make sure they're warm and comfortable. That's the moral imperative around that being. Do you see what I mean?
I would diverge with you there. I'd say if there was an organism that could only like feel hot and cold, and that was like the limit of their entire experience, I wouldn't call that consciousness. I would say they're not conscious. Like really.
But if they could have conscious, and what I'm pointing out is a conscious awareness of the experience of hot and cold, so they have a subjective evaluation of like pain and pleasure, which they go, oh, like it's like it's a feeling that they experience, that they're aware of. What's
right? So we're not just talking about a thermometer. We're talking about a thermometer which can actually feel.
Yeah, like what would usually describe animals. Like it doesn't have to be like even self-aware. It just has to have awareness of this positive and negative experience, which is actually in reference to heat and like hot and cold.
Right, because the thing is, there's going to be like some psoriasis paradox, which is going to be difficult to point to an exact threshold. But there's going to be a very hazy line.
I agree. I think that so far the evidence that we have is in relation to two things, and that's behaviorism and materialism, and that's all we've really got. So like I think that consciousness is in reference to material, as I've said, but isn't determined by it. So I would expect that the existence of a high complex enough like material like organism, like some sort of neurological structure, is usually tied to consciousness. It's just not reducible to that. Like it's not the only thing that's required. from what I've just seen of like neurological studies. Also, I think that like consciousness may exist like in like a variety of different like, for example, like you could have like I think octopi are conscious given the neurological complexity. Like obviously Mim explains like there's a ganglia that they have where it's like kind of smaller brain structures, the same thing that insects have, but like octopi have like ridiculous amounts of them, and are like even highly intelligent in terms of animal standards.
Octopi are actually intelligent creatures.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with like this is the thing. Like this is what I would say with the insects. Like I think that the octopi are probably aware of like maybe a greater amount of stimuli than the insects. I think that humans are aware of probably a greater amount of stimuli than many other animals. And then obviously self-awareness is like an awareness of one's own awareness, which is like another level. I don't know. There's probably some sort of infinite regress on that where we just fall into like existential doom, but like, or like bliss. I don't know, whichever way you go. But like the thing is that like in terms of consciousness, I think that obviously there is a material relation, and I think that we're pretty much justified in saying that it's linked to either there has to be a behavioral foundation on that, which is why we've associated it with brains. It's why like most neuroscientist experiments are like, how do you feel now that this part of your brain is like this? And like we just ask people like, we think you're conscious. Like, what do you think? And I think that it's the same thing with epistemics. Like most of epistemics has been built off, like materialism itself is a epistemic theory that's been built off communication with other beings from which we've assumed are conscious before we've even gotten to the point of talking about what consciousness is and so on. So I would say that behaviorism and materialism are pretty much the foundations for what we have with consciousness. And in the case of like animals, we'd usually see that they have certain they act and they have behaviors, and they also have material components which we would link to consciousness, which is like brains.
Right. Yeah. Where are we in the conversation? So I think I'm just skeptical of in terms of the evolutionary argument that I gave. I'm skeptical that there's any necessity for the lac bug to have the type of consciousness that we would consider morally, right? So I agree with you that there doesn't necessarily need to be any correlation between the size of a brain and the level of consciousness, and there doesn't have to be. You don't have to be able to do cool stuff to be considered morally. For example, if someone can't juggle plates or like do cool dance moves, it doesn't mean that we get to kill them and they're not considered morally. So I agree with you a lot here in this conversation. The disagreement is coming from where, like, in how much are we going to consider the lac bug morally when there's no evolutionary pressure for it to have any consciousness whatsoever. And the likeliness, although it's speculative, the likeliness is that it probably isn't in any state of consciousness that we would consider morally. So yeah, we can, like, the thing is, we can extend the precautionary principle to some degree, but there are additional reasons why we might think that it's actually a good idea to have shellac production, right? Because the thing is, like, firstly, when you've got like milk production or something, we've got highly sentient animals that
I don't believe in the sentience hierarchy. I think that's bullshit. I don't think there's any way to qualify that.
Yeah, or highly deeply they've got personalities. They are very aware, right? So
we know the conscious.
Yeah, and they're tortured, they're milked, and then they're killed, and then we eat them.
Yeah, it's wrong. Yeah.
With the lac bugs, it's like the male lac bugs live natural, completely free lives, just like in nature. right?
Mm-hmm.
The female lac bugs basically do their thing, whatever that is, until they are immobilized by their own slime anyway. So it's not like...
But obviously, the remobilization is either positive or negative, which we have no idea of. And you've made the argument that it wouldn't be negative, which means that it could be a state of contentment, in which case they're happy to be secreting this, and then killing them prematurely would be ending the positive experience of their lives, and so would be wrong. And then if they are otherwise, in a state of angst, then ending their lives may genuinely be freeing them from the frustration and agony that they experience, but then producing more lac bugs would be negative. So it's like, in what way are we justified in this production, though? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I'll get into the additional factors now, but
and then just to point out with the moral hazard point, which I think is a really important aspect to go down. If it's contentious whether these are subjective conscious experiencing agents, then we should patients even, then we should act on the side of moral hazard. And I think that if we can do something with like plant alternatives, synthetic alternatives, or something like that, that isn't likely to produce more harm than otherwise, which I don't think necessarily is, considering how many lac bugs are actually killed in this process and must always be killed. Like you can't produce them. They can't produce it without the lac bugs in this scenario. So I just don't see why, as a vegan, we can come to the conclusion that using these bugs is justified. Because, like, if you're right and they weren't conscious and we could prove that, then I'd be like, all right, well, fair enough. We've proven they're not conscious. But until we've proven that they're not conscious, and we have reasonable doubt to believe they are conscious, and the experience is either positive or negative, and either way, it's morally hazardous. Why you know what I mean? Why would we engage in that?
Well, the thing is, one thing that we've maybe overlooked slightly is by the time the sticklac is harvested, the female bugs are dead anyway, right? They lay their eggs.
No, they're not.
Most of them are, right?
I mean, there's quite a few of them that are dead, but then the larvae are alive, and the female bugs have to extract quite a few female bugs. I'm pretty sure they do it at the point in which the females have just either been impregnated or the larvae are there. So either way, there's always, I think it's before that they've laid their eggs, because they take those females and use them to essentially start the next life cycle.
Well, they just pick up a bit of goo and put it on a tree, like in a bag.
Well, like obviously there has to be, like, I don't know how many females they need, and I know that they basically tie like a bag full of like females to the tree to start the life cycle. So I don't know how much they need to do this, and like obviously in each scenario they're going to do it every tree. I don't know how much they need, right? I don't know how many females they need. It's one of those things. But like obviously either way, like what we know then is that the females are alive. And haven't even burrowed into the started excreting yet, because I haven't even laid their eggs. So like in this scenario, there's no reason to believe that these creatures aren't consciously aware and suffer.
I see what you're saying, but I think the process is such that they're, like, by definition, like, they're already immobilized blobs covered in slime at that point. Because
I don't think so. I don't know if they are. Because I don't think they started, because they've just been impregnated by the males, I think, but when they're quote unquote harvested,
I don't think they pick individual little bugs.
No. I don't think so. I just think that they scrape the branches, and then some of it gets processed, and all of the bugs on that part die, and some of it just gets stuffed in a bag.
Yeah, but that's already, like, they're already in the immobilized blob state.
Not necessarily. I mean, they could be on top of the resin.
Yeah, but then there wouldn't be enough resin for them to harvest. That, like, they have to.
No, because they do a couple of life cycles. They do like 2 or 3 life cycles. That's why there's so much resin, because they basically let them do this a couple of times and then the harvest.
Yeah, right. But if you did it prematurely, where they were still exposed and not immobilized blobs, then you wouldn't have enough lac.
But you're talking about like the third generation or fourth generation of female or whatever. So like they would, and they need those females anyway to make the next generation. Do you know what I mean? Like for the next like harvest. So there's always going to have to be alive females in order to produce the next harvest anyway. It's whether they're gelatinous in that gelatinous blob state or not. And I think they've just been impregnated and haven't started the production of either way. It's either this way. Either they've just been impregnated, in which case they haven't laid their eggs and they're going to be used, which I think makes the most sense because they need to be used for the next, the next life cycle, or they've produced larvae which are now going to die. So it's either one or the other.
Well, they're in the sort of like they're in the lacquer, because I've seen a picture of it. They put that on the tree. It's not like they're not exposed. They're like in the lacquer, right?
I thought
they scrape off.
They tie a bag around to the tree, and then the larvae. I was under the impression that they tie a bag to the tree, and then the larvae crawl out of the bag, burrow their way into the. This is what I thought. Burrow their way into the branches, then they cover themselves in the goo. But I mean, I'm not entirely sure. So like whatever. Like it could be that the females crawl onto the branches, burrow themselves in, and then start releasing the goo, like the resin. So I don't know. But either way, like there is definitely going to have to be like one or two, like as like one or the other. It's either we're killing the offspring or we're killing the females. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think it's more like killing the offspring, but I'm not sure. We'd have to get a biologist who specializes in invertebrates in here to
yeah, no idea. I would have expected that we're killing the females and only keep some of them, because obviously we need the next life cycle. So it wouldn't make sense to just have loads of offspring unless we use the offspring to, like, we just kind of kept them in like a jar, which they reproduce, and then like, the next females will like give them so long, so there's females that are impregnated and then put them on a tree.
I think it's quite low tech. They just like scrape off some shit and put it on another tree.
But yeah, I mean, it would be. A jar is quite low tech as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that. I think it's low tech in the sense that it's either like they let them have a life cycle, like they basically let them have one life cycle in a bag. But I don't think it works like that. I think they need the tree, and I think the actual resin they produce is dependent upon the tree, which they burrow into.
Yeah, because they extract the sap. That's why they're on the tree in the first place.
Yeah, so I think that it would have to be the females, the pregnant females that were, essentially would scrape them off, put them in a bag, and then the rest just gets, essentially murked in the process, like of making the shellac.
Well, the last things that I want to discuss, the fact that the only reason. So shellac, most of it is produced in like India and Thailand, but mostly India. I think India is the biggest market by far, and it's produced in such a way that there's like agricultural workers do the shellac production, and everyone has got nice jobs out of it, and it's good because it's good for the people there. It provides them with an income. And one of the biggest things is that not only is it provided with an income, because that's not an amazing argument on its own, but the fact that if everyone was to boycott shellac in the world and the market had to stop, I'm not just saying boo-hoo, the people lose their jobs, because whatever, that happens a lot. But
it's the real life scenario of the people that are now unemployed, the whole areas, the local economies crumble, that kind of thing.
Well, not only that, I was going to say that those agricultural labourers, they essentially act as ecology conservationists. Like they preserve the natural ecology for the shellac production. And
Yeah, we keep that area, like a lot of it's being deforested in the first place to move for animal agriculture and like crop production. And the only reason it's not being cut down really in the grand scheme of things under capitalism is because of the money invested in shellac, really.
yeah, exactly. So basically, if
Yeah.
you stop shellac production, you're just going to bulldoze all the wildlife.
Yeah, I mean it's quite sparse anyway. If you've ever seen them, like it's actually quite sparse. There's not very much going on there. Like it's really like quite
Yeah, but it's India.
it's like one or two trees. It's like, and whereas before there used to be like wildlife live there, like tigers and stuff. There's nothing really there anymore. It's just the trees, and the trees themselves aren't like bustling with life. Really,
Yeah, they do look a bit like wimpy. The trees.
yeah, they just looked a bit like, yeah, that's a bit like not okay, really. But
Yeah,
the thing
like
is that
trees.
and I think, like, to be honest, I would be surprised if they would probably shoot down. They'd be more like to shoot birds and stuff like that to protect the lac production. You know, I think like at the end of the day,
I don't think they shoot birds and stuff because so basically
I guess the lac would protect them enough anyway, wouldn't it? I guess that's the point, isn't it?
yeah, and the lac bugs are actually deemed a pest animal. So when lac bugs invade agricultural crops, it devastates the agricultural crop. The tree fruit. I think they're going to devastate tree fruits and nuts and stuff like this. So they're actually deemed a pest, and so it's actually an interesting situation where they're propagated deliberately because to basically harvest what is essentially their shit, right? So it's almost like a manure thing, right? So if you weren't gonna
I mean, you could like obviously manure. You could have manure production that wasn't unethical. Really, you could just have a bunch of cows in a field that were eating grass, and then you go and grab that shit, and then that'll be okay. Really, there's no like, but then like, there's nothing that would necessarily entail that we couldn't have a symbiotic relationship with animals.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But then with the lac bug, it's like, no, some of them are going to die, and that's unavoidable.
Yeah.
And that's what we deem that as an acceptable risk, that we are harming these animals for the production of shellac, which for the most part isn't necessary. I mean, like, it's a lot of the time it's used as like confectionery kind of like shiny casings and stuff, like shiny what's the word, like it's like the shiny coatings for like sweets. And like I know that like there's loads of other vegan shiny coatings for sweets like that use different like resins and stuff, and like different not resins even, but like artificially produced like coatings. It just seems that it's just like it's cheap, it's pretty good for like the things that it does, and so we'll use it because we can't. It doesn't seem like, oh right, no, like it's the only thing that we can do, and it's like, it's a necessary evil kind of thing. It's like, no, it's not like that at all.
Yeah, well, I feel like it seems in this case with my kitchen, going back to the original story that I was telling.
But my kitchen.
It seems like shellac is pretty much the only thing you can do to get a second-hand kitchen and paint it in a decent color.
But I mean, you just said there was like artificial ones. There was just like you picked the wrong company.
I'm skeptical. There seems to be only one other company, but so I bought synthetic shellac, right? But it wasn't. And the other one, I'm pretty sure if I wrote to them, it'd be like, oh yeah, it's just shellac as well, because it doesn't. You don't. I researched it a bit, and I don't think you can actually get actually synthetic shellac, or if you did, it wouldn't even be called synthetic shellac. It would probably just be like resin paint or something. I don't know, resin primer, like, or epoxy primer or something. So anyway, what I was going to say is, firstly, so to sort of wrap it up a bit, because we've been going for a while now. So I'll just make a list of.
You can use like oil-based primers. I just created a quick Google search. You could use like oil-based primers, and then latex is okay, but then it can cause the wood to swell up or something.
No, because kitchen cabinets aren't wood; they're chipboard with melamine.
Is it like MDF or?
No, it's chipboard, but then which is basically so MDF is sawdust and glue. Chipboard is like chips of wood, and glue, but you don't actually you don't interface with the real wood because there's like a melamine plastic coating over it. So if you go to the kitchen, look at a countertop, or look at any of the drawers, unless they're actually real wood drawers or doors, they're going to be melamine. And the tabletop, the countertop, unless it's like real stone or real wood, is going to be melamine. And so that is a type of plastic, and you can't paint over that with a latex paint. You can't paint over it with an oil-based primer.
Could you not like cover it in something first, then like, so for example, I know a lot of people like in the sort of furniture reproduction things, they cover stuff in like wallpaper, or then there's like to make them look nice, and then there's also like you could cover it in like maybe it's like a plastic vinyl or something like that you could use to like a sticky plastic thing that you could use as just like a covering, like self-adhesive,
like a vinyl wrap.
Yeah, like something, I don't know, like a self-adhesive kind of thing. And then
to be honest, like these are things that you could possibly do, but to be honest, like the only real sensible thing to do is to repaint it using a shellac primer as the adhesion.
I mean, I can't comment on that because I'm not a tradesman. If any tradesman in the chat knows whether like there is an alternative here, please speak up. I mean, like, I don't know if the oil-based ones would work. The oil-based primers would work. But, you know, as you say, like, if there's a synthetic alternative, and then if there is no alternative, then I guess, like, really, I guess it comes down to whether it would be justified. Like, would it be justified in using this if there's no alternative for this specific, issue? I mean, I'm leaning to say that it wouldn't be justified in the sense that it would be. I meuld be vegan regardless because it would be possible and practicable. So if it was justified, it would still be vegan. But then it would just be that the animals are being harmed, but there's no way to prevent that harm. But it seems to me that like there are ways that you could go around preventing it that are just kind of inconvenient.
Well, I think what it comes down to is if you use anything else, it will just scratch and chip off. So you will just throw away the kitchen, buy a new kitchen. So if you want to buy a secondhand kitchen and repaint it so it doesn't look shit, then you sort of need to use the shellac paint. So I'm not arguing necessarily for like sweeps with shellac on it, or like shellac now polish or whatever the hell that is. Like, why do you need that? But if you actually like do need a shellac based primer like I did, as I've laid out in this conversation, I don't see a huge moral issue with it. So what we would also now have to consider, so we've talked about the ecological conservation of the shellac production areas. The people who are working the land would all lose their jobs and the environment would be bulldozed. And we've talked about how I made an argument from an evolutionary perspective how it would be unlikely that there would be so conscious because of the argument from the caloric expenditure. And yeah, there's no real alternative for repurposing a secondhand kitchen. And so the last thing which I'd want to touch upon would be the fact that if you do want to buy a secondhand kitchen instead of buying new because you don't want the throwaway society thing, like you don't want it to end up in landfill, you actually want to sort of reuse stuff, repurpose stuff, and upcycle stuff, and not always just like go to IKEA and buy the first like brand new thing. Then you have to take into consideration that if I'm not going to use the shellac primer, then I'm going to go to IKEA and buy a new kitchen, and I don't care if it's 7,000-8,000 euros more expensive. It's more like the kitchen that's new Think about the CO2 produced in the manufacturing process. Think about the plastics used in the production process, and the chipboard, the amount of bugs that are ground up in the chipboard to make the chipboard for the everything that you buy there. All of the bugs killed by the transportation of in the lorries transporting all the brand new kitchen stuff. Think about all of the stuff that goes into creating a new kitchen and all the bugs that might get killed in that process, and all the CO2 that might be released, or industrial chemicals that might be released, which might kill more bugs or change the environment in a way which kills more bugs. So it's like, on one hand, you've got use shellac-based primer, reuse something, don't let it go to landfill, do something great for the environment. Shellac preserves the environment. It's conserving the Indian wildlife and ecology in the shellac production areas and giving people jobs. And yeah, a few female lac bugs die who are immobile, tiny little blobs covered in goo that can't move. And I don't think they're conscious because of the argument I already gave. But the alternative is, okay, I'm just going to buy a new kitchen, and this old kitchen is going to go to landfill when it's perfectly good if it was just painted and all the things I've just listed. So I really feel like not only is it considering the morality of or the consciousness of the lac bug, which I'm very eyebrow raised on anyway, but it's also like, what is the alternative? The alternative is buying a brand new kitchen and and throwing away and putting the old one in landfill. So, and all of the problems that involves in the production of the new kitchen.
Okay. I guess I did a quick Google search. It said something about melamine primers or something could be used. I don't know.
There's no such thing. I think it's a primer for melamine.
I have no idea. I'm certainly not. It just basically said that any melamine primer or whatever, I don't know. I have no idea. So yeah, I see what you're saying. So this is essentially my point. Like, one, even if I accepted everything that you've just said, shellac still wouldn't be vegan, because it really would only be vegan under a given context rather than the actual product and production being vegan. You'd say, like, look, if there was no other alternative and it was necessary to prevent other suffering and death, then shellac would be vegan, and that's fair enough. But it's like, right, well, given enough, given the context of any animal product, it could be vegan in that respect. It doesn't make the product itself vegan. It's like, when we talk about shellac, really we're talking about all of its uses and not this one particular use, which is fairly niche, if I'm honest. And then obviously it doesn't exclude the possibility that there is vegan primers, or the possibility of vegan primers, if we remove this product and didn't support it anymore anyway. And so the continued support of this product may be producing the circumstance in which we can only use shellac, because it's essentially the cheapest, most viable and available source of these primers. Then I would just say, like, look, like, even the industry, it probably wouldn't even survive if it was only being used in these like very niche cases. You're probably not going to have a very, like, the industry itself is not the most lucrative one in the first place, from what I'm aware. And if it wasn't for industries that were like, buying it for food products, we're using it for nails, like for like women's nails and stuff like that, like as a coating for that. Like, they're like the main uses of shellac, from what I'm aware, not in industry primers. And then, so I don't even see whether the industry would survive even if we did cut this out. So we might end up just being without it anyway and needing a vegan alternative. And then obviously this is the whole conversation is based off the fact that we have reason to believe that the lac bugs are conscious, subjective creatures who would be harmed by the production, who are harmed by the production of this process. And so would feel either, pain in the sense that when their life cycle is utterly awful and nature has put them in a state of like pain and misery from which we shouldn't perpetuate, or we kill many of them and end the state of what would otherwise be in contentment or, relative like happiness, to end their lives prematurely. And I think the reality of the situation is that we should just probably not engage in this at all. In any ways, stop producing more lac bugs to either die or needing to be rescued. And in which case, like, we can use vegan alternatives. You said yourself, there might be a vegan alternative already, but you need to have a little bit more research into that. Might be a bit inconvenient, but fair enough. You can still not have to buy the brand new kitchen. And I'm not advocating anyone buy a brand new kitchen. There should be a vegan alternative. And if there's not, then we need to essentially push the industry in that direction anyway. So just because there is no alternative now doesn't mean there won't be an alternative if we do begin the boycott anyway. So there's no need to say that, look, we're always going to have to buy, brand new kitchens and so on. And, as I say, there might be, you might be able to cover them in plastic vinyl. You might be able to use a different primer. There's other alternatives to like look into, and maybe it might take a little bit more research, but maybe write a blog post about it or something, man. Do the research and educate us all. Make a video on like how to paint your cupboards, like that kind of thing. Turn it into something that's profitable for you as well. So yeah, I think that the moral hazard's too high, and I think that we shouldn't perpetuate the idea that shellac is vegan, especially since it would only be quote unquote vegan in a very niche contextual circumstance, namely buying a secondhand kitchen and needing to paint it with a shellac-based primer. So yeah.
Nice one, man. What do you? Does that constitute closing statements, or shall I respond to a couple of things you said?
Well, I thought we were closing, but it's up to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I was just going to say that I have already researched this, man. And it seems that there aren't any real good, viable alternatives to repurposing old kitchens, and the industry. A lot of woodworkers use shellac, man. Like in woodworking industries and primers, like that's where most of, like, in my understanding, most of the shellac's getting used. It's not the sweets, and yeah, that was the main thing. Yeah. So I guess we've given our closing points. I guess I was going to recap, but I guess already mentioned that evolutionary argument from caloric expenditure, lack of alternatives. Buying a new kitchen, it's gonna everything involved with that, and chucking the old one away, and the Indian shellac conservation areas going to be bulldozed and everyone lose their job. So I don't know. I see what you're saying, man. That we should really be maybe extend the precautionary principle to these female shellac blob bugs, but I think in this case, as Tom Reagan says, be careful where you draw your line and draw it in pencil. For now, I feel like I'm drawing the line in a way which excludes lac bugs from what I consider to be moral.
Arbitrarily draw the line. I think that's
based upon my evolutionary argument from the club.
But the evolutionary, man, that is not biology. Like, I'm not even going to pretend that that's biology. That was just like, I have a biological theory, and it also happens to allow me to paint my cabinets. That is not biology. Unless you get me some empirical, like, biology's a science, man. That was not science.
Biological cupboard painting theory.
But that's a debate, man. It's been interesting. I know Marty. I think he wanted to ask you a couple of questions and stuff. Maybe like